I'm about to show you something that will fundamentally change how you see reality. And honestly, it still keeps me up at night. What if every decision you didn't make, every path you didn't take, is actually being lived out by another version of you in a parallel universe right now? And what if I told you this isn't science fiction, but something quantum physicists have been quietly saying for decades? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to prove to you using real experiments that your consciousness might literally be creating the reality you experience. And by the end, you'll understand why shifting your reality isn't just possible, it's happening whether you realize it or not. So, let me start with something that happened in my own life that made me question everything. 3 years ago, I was stuck in a job I hated, living in a city that drained me, and I couldn't see a way out. Then I learned about quantum mechanics, not the boring textbook version, but the implications that physicists don't usually talk about in public. And within 6 months, everything in my life had shifted. New career, new city, new relationships. Now you might think that's just coincidence or positive thinking, but here's what blew my mind when I dug deeper into the science. The mathematics of quantum mechanics actually supports the idea that reality is far more flexible than we've been taught. And I'm going to prove it to you. Let's go back to 1905. Scientists thought they had the universe figured out. Everything followed predictable laws, like a giant cosmic machine. Then they started looking at the smallest particles, electrons, photons, atoms, and what they discovered was so disturbing that even Einstein, who helped create quantum theory, spent the rest of his life trying to prove it wrong. They found that particles don't act like solid objects. They act like waves of probability, existing in multiple states simultaneously, until someone observes them. And here's the kicker. The act of observation, the act of consciousness interacting with these particles, literally forces them to pick one state and collapse into it. This isn't philosophy. This is measured, repeatable, experimental fact. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds like pseudoscience or wishful thinking. So let me show you the experiment that proves it beyond any doubt. It's called the Double Slit Experiment, and it's been called the most beautiful experiment in physics. Here's how it works. You take a screen with 2 slits in it, and you fire electrons at it one at a time. Common sense tells you the electrons should go through one slit or the other, and you should see 2 bands on the detector behind the screen. Right? Wrong. What actually happens is you see an interference pattern, multiple bands of light and dark, which only makes sense if each single electron is somehow going through both slits at the same time, interfering with itself like a wave. That's already weird. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. When you put a detector at the slits to see which one the electron goes through, the interference pattern disappears, and you get 2 bands, like the electron knew it was being watched and changed its behavior. Let that sink in for a second. The electron behaves differently when you observe it versus when you don't. It's like the universe is playing peekaboo with us. When we're not looking, particles exist as waves of possibility in multiple places at once. The moment we look, they pick one location and show up there. This has been tested thousands of times with photons, electrons, even large molecules. And the result is always the same. Observation changes reality. Nobel Prize winner Niels Bohr said, "There is no quantum world. There is only an abstract quantum description." And it is wrong to think that the task of physics is to find out how nature is. Physics concerns what we can say about nature. In other words, reality doesn't exist independent of observation. Now you might be wondering, okay, that's fascinating, but what does this have to do with my life? With shifting my reality? Here's where it gets practical, and this is what most people miss. If observation collapses quantum possibilities into one reality at the subatomic level, and we know that everything in the universe, including your brain, your thoughts, your entire body, is made of these quantum particles, then consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's participating in creating it. Your focused attention, your beliefs, your expectations, these aren't just thoughts floating in your head, they're quantum observers, collapsing infinite possibilities into the specific reality you experience. But wait, there's more. And this is where it connects to parallel universes. In 1957, a physicist named Hugh Everett proposed something radical to explain the observer effect. He said, what if the electron doesn't actually choose one path? What if every possible outcome happens, but in different branches of reality? This became known as the many worlds interpretation. According to this, every time a quantum decision happens, the universe splits into multiple versions. In one universe, the electron went through the left slit. In another universe, it went through the right slit. Both realities exist. Both are equally real. You just experience one of them. And here's the mind-bending part. This isn't happening just with electrons. It's happening with every quantum event in your body, trillions of times per second. Which means right now, as you watch this video, there are countless versions of you experiencing different realities. Now I want you to do something with me right now. Pause and think about a decision you made today. Maybe you chose coffee over tea. Maybe you took a different route to work. Maybe you sent that text message, or didn't. According to many worlds, there's a version of you who made the opposite choice, and their entire day unfolded differently. There's a version of you who never clicked on this video. There's a version of you living the life you dream about right now. They're all real. They all exist. The only question is, which one are you tuned into? And this is where quantum shift comes in. Let me explain this with an analogy that'll make it crystal clear. Think of reality like a radio. There are hundreds of stations broadcasting simultaneously, different songs, different shows, all existing in the same space as waves. Your radio doesn't create these stations. It just tunes into one frequency at a time. Change the dial, and you hear a completely different reality, even though that station was there all along. Your consciousness works the same way. All possible versions of your life, all possible realities, are broadcasting right now as quantum possibilities. Your thoughts, your focus, your emotional state. These are the dial that determines which reality you tune into and experience. This isn't metaphysics anymore. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. And here's the evidence that this isn't just theory. Studies in quantum biology have shown that quantum effects play a crucial role in biological systems. Photosynthesis, the process plants use to convert light to energy, operates on quantum principles. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in their eyes. Your sense of smell works because of quantum tunneling. The idea that quantum effects are too small or too fragile to matter at the biological level has been completely overturned. Your brain, with its billions of neurons firing in coordinated patterns, is a quantum system. Consciousness, emerging from this quantum system, isn't separate from the quantum field. It's part of it. Now, let's talk about the double slit experiment again. But this time, I want to show you something even weirder that most people don't know about. In 1999, scientists did a delayed choice quantum eraser experiment. They set it up so that you could decide whether to observe which slit the photon went through, after the photon had already hit the detector. Logic tells you that shouldn't matter, right? The photon already made its journey, already hit the screen. But here's what happened. When they decided to observe which slit it went through, even after the fact, the interference pattern disappeared. When they decided not to observe it, the interference pattern appeared. This suggests that the act of observation doesn't just affect the present. It can reach backwards in time and change what already happened. Let me say that again. Your observation, in the present, can alter the past. This has profound implications for reality shifting. It means that the story you tell yourself about your past isn't just a memory. It's actively shaping what that past was. Every time you revisit a memory, you're not just recalling it. You're collapsing quantum possibilities about what that experience meant. This is why two people can experience the same event and remember it completely differently. They're literally living in different quantum branches of that memory. And this is why changing your internal narrative about who you are and what's possible for you isn't just positive thinking. It's quantum mechanics in action. So how do you actually use this? How do you shift from the reality you're experiencing now to the one you want? This is where it gets practical, and I'm going to give you a framework based on quantum principles, not wishful thinking. First principle, coherence. In quantum mechanics, when particles are in coherent states, they can do things that seem impossible, like be in two places at once or tunnel through barriers. Your consciousness works the same way. When your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are all aligned, pointing in the same direction, you create coherence, and reality responds. When you're conflicted, when part of you wants success and part of you believes you don't deserve it, you create decoherence, and you stay stuck in the same patterns. The practice here is simple. Get clear on what you want, not just intellectually, but emotionally and viscerally, until every part of you is aligned with that reality. Second principle, observation. Remember the double slit experiment. Observation collapses the wave function into one reality. What you focus on, what you pay attention to consistently, that's what solidifies in your experience. Most people unconsciously observe the reality they don't want. They focus on what's wrong, what's missing, what they're afraid of, and then wonder why their life doesn't change. The quantum shift practice is to become a deliberate observer. Multiple times throughout your day, stop and consciously observe evidence of the reality you want to experience. Notice moments of abundance. Notice opportunities. Notice synchronicities. The more you observe it, the more you collapse the quantum field in that direction. Third principle, superposition. Before you observe it, the electron exists in all possible states simultaneously. Before you lock into a belief about who you are or what's possible, you exist in a superposition of infinite potential versions of yourself. The practice here is to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, to hold multiple possibilities as equally real, without collapsing them too quickly. Most people are so desperate for certainty that they collapse into limiting realities just to feel secure. Stay in the quantum field of possibility a little longer. Imagine multiple versions of your future as vividly real, and let the universe show you which one wants to emerge. Fourth principle, entanglement. When two quantum particles become entangled, they remain connected regardless of distance. Change one, and the other changes instantly. Your consciousness is entangled with the quantum field of reality. You're not separate from the universe, observing it from outside. You're part of the system, and the system responds to you. This means that you don't have to force or manipulate reality to change. You just have to shift your internal state, and reality reconfigures around you, because you and it are entangled. The practice is to stop trying to control external circumstances, and instead focus on shifting your internal frequency. Change your state, and watch how reality mirrors it back to you. Now I know some of you are thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If this really worked, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be living their dream life. So what's the catch? Here's the catch, and it's a big one. Most people don't actually want to shift realities. They want their current reality to validate them. They want to stay in their familiar patterns, their familiar story of who they are, and just have better outcomes. But quantum shift doesn't work that way. To shift to a new reality, you have to be willing to let go of the identity you've built in this one. You have to be willing to step into uncertainty, to not know who you are for a while. And most people aren't willing to do that. They'd rather stay in a known hell than step into an unknown heaven. Here's a real example from quantum physics that illustrates this perfectly. It's called quantum tunneling. Imagine you're rolling a ball toward a hill. Classically, if the ball doesn't have enough energy, it'll roll back down. It can't get over the hill. But in quantum mechanics, particles can tunnel through barriers that they shouldn't be able to cross. They literally disappear from one side and appear on the other, without ever traveling through the middle. How? Because they exist as waves of probability, and there's a small but real probability that they're already on the other side of the barrier. When that probability collapses into reality, they tunnel through. Your consciousness can do the same thing. You don't have to figure out every step between where you are and where you want to be. You can quantum tunnel there, by aligning with the frequency of that reality so completely that the universe finds a way to collapse you into it. Let me tell you about an experiment that demonstrates this in a way that'll blow your mind. It's called the quantum Zeno effect, and it shows that observation doesn't just collapse possibilities, it can freeze them. If you observe a quantum system continuously, it actually prevents it from changing states. It's like the universe's version of a watched pot never boils. Now here's the fascinating part. This happens in your life too. When you obsessively monitor and measure your progress toward a goal, when you constantly check if it's working yet, you're actually preventing the quantum shift from happening. You're collapsing the wave function back into the current state, over and over. The practice here is to set your intention clearly. Observe the reality you want periodically, but then let go, and let the quantum field rearrange itself without your constant interference. Another crucial concept is quantum decoherence. This is what happens when a quantum system interacts with its environment and loses its quantum properties, becoming classical and fixed. In your life, decoherence happens when you let the external world, your circumstances, other people's opinions, your past results, define your reality for you. You lose your quantum flexibility and become locked into one trajectory. The key to maintaining quantum coherence and staying in the field of infinite possibility is to cultivate internal stability, meditate, create a strong inner witness, practice being in the world but not of it. The less you let external circumstances knock you out of your chosen frequency, the more powerfully you can shift. Now let's address the elephant in the room. If all of this is true, if quantum mechanics really supports the idea that consciousness creates reality, why don't more scientists talk about it openly? Here's the truth. They do, but usually only after they retire or in private conversations. Why? Because the implications are so radical that they threaten the materialist paradigm that science has been built on for centuries. The idea that consciousness is fundamental, that reality is participatory, that observation creates outcomes. These ideas make a lot of people uncomfortable because they give you responsibility. You can't blame the universe or bad luck or other people if you're actively collapsing the reality you experience through your observation and attention. But some of the greatest minds in physics have said this explicitly. Max Planck, the father of quantum theory, said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." Erwin Schrödinger said, "Consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms, for consciousness is absolutely fundamental." Werner Heisenberg said, "What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning." These aren't fringe mystics. These are Nobel Prize-winning physicists telling you that consciousness is primary. So here's what I want you to understand by the end of this video. You are not a passive observer of a fixed objective reality. You are a quantum observer, actively participating in the creation of your experience, moment by moment. Every thought, every belief, every emotion is a measurement, collapsing infinite quantum possibilities into the specific timeline you experience. The reality you're living right now is just one branch of the multiverse, one station on the dial, and you have the power to shift to a different one, not someday, not when conditions are perfect, but right now. Through the quantum mechanics of your own consciousness, let me leave you with one final experiment you can do yourself. Right now, close your eyes for a moment and imagine the version of your life you most want to experience. Don't think about how it'll happen. Don't analyze if you deserve it. Just see it. Feel it as vividly as you can. Notice the details, the emotions, the sensations. Now here's the quantum part. That reality you just imagined exists right now as a real possibility in the quantum field. It's not fantasy. It's a potential timeline, a parallel universe version of you that's just as real as this one. The only difference is probability. Right now, you're entangled with this current reality. But every time you vividly imagine and emotionally align with that desired reality, you're increasing the probability amplitude of that wave function. You're making it more likely to collapse into your experience. Do this consistently with emotional coherence, and you're not hoping for change. You're literally using quantum mechanics to shift your reality. This is quantum shift, not magic, not delusion, but the practical application of the most well-tested theory in physics, applied to the one quantum system you have direct control over, your own consciousness. The universe isn't happening to you, you're happening with it. You're not separate from the quantum field. You are the quantum field experiencing itself, and you get to choose which possibility you collapse into reality. So the question isn't whether reality shifting is possible. The question is, which reality are you going to shift into? Because whether you realize it or not, you're already doing it. Every single moment of every single day. The only question is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? That's the quantum shift, and now you know how it works. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where we'll explore quantum entanglement and how your thoughts might literally be affecting people across distance. Make sure you subscribe, because this journey into quantum consciousness is just getting started.